Hello guys, welcome back to another lovely trading video. In this one we're going to be doing some in-depth stock analysis on Moderna, ticker MRNA. We did as well just do one before on Peloton because that was down around 35% today, so if you want to check that out, it was uploaded just before this one. So to get straight onto it, what is the first thing we always look for? And we usually go onto the daily chart and look, is there any gaps that need to be filled, because more likely than not these gaps will get filled. And we can see we do have a gap fill at 260. We can see we kind of jumped through that, so that wouldn't be unlikely for it to be, if it pulls back before continuing down, this will most likely be a level it will come to. And again we have another kind of gap area at 138 to kind of, yeah, that 358. But for now, these are kind of the two key levels that stick out to me instantly when looking at the chart, so they're the two we will go off. Now we'll go over to the flexible chart so we can see the standard deviations and see where are most likely buying pressure and bounce is going to happen. And we can see that basically today Moderna almost came into that second deviation, so we started seeing some buy pressure come into it. It looks like it missed it by a few cents. Or actually no, it missed it by about $3, so it may come back then, continue lower to bounce off this level. But sometimes, as most things, you can't ever get it to the cent, so this could be kind of where the buying pressure came in. It just came in a bit early. But yeah, this level will probably still have some significance anyway, if it continues lower. Again, we have another level around 170, 163. I mean, obviously you can wait for these to go lower, but do you think Moderna is actually going to go down to, let's say, $63 or $100? Probably not. So we'll be looking more at the levels which are more achievable, so the 206 and the 170 are kind of those two key levels that we could actually be seeing. Now right now obviously we're kind of at that low risk buy entry. Where would we be looking for profits? 260 I would say it's a good area to be looking at some profits, because it's the kind of the gap or start of the gap fill, so you tend to get some buying pressure in at that level. But obviously that level does last all the way until around 270, so kind of around that area I'd be looking to lock in profits, because you could see a lot of selling pressure come into that. And then also matching with that level, if you go around $7 high at 278, you then have the first deviation on the daily. Again, selling pressure could come in at this level, but just is an area that makes sense to be looking in some profits. Then if you're holding some more past there, 313, kind of 312 is the next area that we would be looking to lock in profits. Again, first deviation on the 4 hour, selling pressure is likely to come in. Doesn't mean it's going to continue low when it comes into one of these levels, but you would most likely see quite a large pullback, so it could quite easily pull from, let's say, $312 all the way back down to around 278, even if it's going to continue higher. So that's why we usually just lock in some profits, just in case it doesn't continue higher and instead continues down. So that is going to be our key kind of areas to lock in profits. Yes, you could wait for it to push higher. It's not impossible, but we do also need to realize that with Moderna, the kind of hype of the vaccine has definitely died down. Their earnings are probably not going to be as strong from here on out, so it may not make sense for it to get back to around that $500 target. So we would most likely be looking for those lower down targets of around, 260 to 300 would be kind of at the push targets we're looking at. But if you are someone who wants to look for those higher targets, 385, yes, it's a gap fill and lines up the statistical mean. Selling pressure most likely will come in there, and you will expect to see a pullback. 420 statistical mean, again, selling pressure is most likely going to come in here, and if for some reason it breaks through, then we'll be looking at a level of around an all-time high of around 495, and a push high at 525. So again, depending on how you trade, you will use these levels differently. We're just saying these are areas where you expect to see buying or selling pressure coming in, depending on what level you're looking at. If they're below the statistical mean, then you expect buying pressure to come in, and if they're above, then selling pressure. But then you may be thinking, okay, why do we lock in profits when it then comes into a deviation below the statistical mean? And that's because they are still a standard deviations, so you expect to see some selling pressure. May not be a strong selling pressure as you expect at the high deviations, but you still expect to pull back. So it just makes sense to be looking in profits usually at the top, and then if it pulls back and continues lower, you've locked in profits, you're fine. If it continues higher, cool, you've locked it in at a good area, and you can lock in more profits as it continues higher. So that's kind of overall breakdown on Moderna, but obviously you got to take your own risks, because you need to realize that whenever a stock is gapping down, such as Moderna, 15% in a day, and it's off some sort of news, in this case bad earnings or missed earnings should we say, then you are taking on that added risk of buying a stock. But mostly you tend to see stocks overreact, or investors overreact to news, so you tend to see them get a strong sell-off, and then they tend to pull back to a more reasonable level. But again, depending on your trading strategy, you should have a plan for that. So I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope to see you in the next one, and that's it. Peace.
I wanna go, I wanna fly, I wanna take myself